Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Bonnie. It is Tuesday, June 11th, 2019. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission of Darien, Connecticut. It is 8 o'clock. We're in room 206 at Town Hall. Kev, take it away, please.
General meeting, item number 1, mandatory referral number 2-2019, Board of Selectmen, Oxford Ridge Elementary School, 395 Mansfield Avenue. Proposal for a substantial improvement to town property.
We talked about this last week. We thought there was enough basic information to kind of weigh in. Basically, Jeremy, actually, I should say Kate Bush, town administrator, put together a little memo of some applicable items that would point out the reconstruction of an elementary school is consistent with the town plan. I know Mr. Mulvaney, excuse me, was at the RTM meeting with Jeremy last night. They basically went through a brief presentation because they have to go to the state for a funding request, and so it was a pretty broad overview of what the project might be. It was more towards the financing. They didn't have any schematics, if you will, of the new school, but they did outline the property and the likelihood that, you know, the main building's coming down. I think this memo is pretty clear that when we wrote the town plan, you know, we call out facility needs, upgrading existing elementary schools and classrooms. I think they even talk about the portables, HVAC issues. You know, we deem the facilities not expected to be adequate for community needs to 2025. So I feel really comfortable in asking staff to just draft a positive referral, but I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
Yes, I've been a parent of an Oxford student for 7 years now, and the facilities are despicable.
Okay.
They are in horrific condition, and frankly, it's dire that this building be rebuilt, so I'm a strong yes.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
The municipal use zone issue is pending still.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
Will the town be requested to advise planning and zoning if that municipal,
MU.
if the MU zone is implemented, will they come back and tell us which regime they're going to?
Oh,
pursue
yeah,
this?
well, certainly. So two things. We'll discuss whether or not to implement it as a you know, permanent kind of overlay on all the municipal properties tonight. But if it doesn't get implemented, they're going to come back with a whole site plan and
I did mention that to Kip Coons, the co-chairman of the building committee, earlier today. I said, I don't know where the commission's going to come from later tonight when they deliberate. However, if the commission decides not to proceed with the MU overlay on the Ox Ridge property, then it would be up to your committee, if the architect and your group decide you want to proceed, to propose such to the commission, and the commission would have the ability to say yes or no on the MU zone.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, when you refer to your committee, what are you referring to?
The Ox Ridge Building Committee,
Who's on that?
they have a committee of, I believe, 10.
But someone on this board?
No, it's Kip Coons,
Yeah,
Kip
okay.
Dean,
So
and
their
they are-
committee.
Their goal is to
Yeah.
hire the contractor supervisor, architects and others to put together a plan
And
to
would come
run
back
through
here.
us, maybe inland wetlands, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, RTM, et cetera, over the next year. They mentioned last night, they expect it to take 3 years.
39 months, I think they said.
Yeah,
You mean from today till finish or till start of
I think they were
construction?
looking at it in August
Yeah.
22 open.
Correct.
If
Our
all goes
children
as
will never
proceeded.
benefit, but
Yeah.
I still feel strongly.
No
Yes,
more.
It takes a while
We're
to
getting off topic.
do
Of course,
a number
yeah.
of
Yeah.
items. So I think your answer, Jim, is they have not started putting pen to paper. They did just hire an architect, and I think they're focused, from the sense I got last night, was getting their paperwork together for the state reimbursement, which is a very small piece. And then what's ironic, which is what they mentioned, is the state bases the reimbursement before the plans are done,
Which is wild.
which is
But anyway, so this is just, I mean, again, this is the first step in the process one of the first steps in the process for the town to say, hey, based on our review, this is consistent with our town plan. Pretty basic kind of overview, so. Anybody have any other comments or questions?
Make a motion to write a positive report.
I shall motion to write a positive report.
Second, all in favor? All right.
We'll get that out to the commission to proofread.
Item number 2, and I'm sorry.
Yes,
Do we want to prove, do you want to see it or just have them write it?
it's up to you. We can bring it back to you on the 25th,
I don't
or
know.
just have you, no? Okay.
It's like 3 lines.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, great,
I mean,
great,
you got a memo that calls out the key areas. I think you can pull enough together.
got it.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 2, permit application number 11R, Oak Ridge Riding Racket Club, 512 Middlesex Road. Modification of prior approval relative to paddle court use.
I guess, Jeremy, you want to say anything?
Sure, this is,
I'll
you
go
have in
ahead
your
some-
packet the letter dated June 5th from Amy Zabatakis on behalf of the Ox Ridge Riding and Racket Club. Amy is here, as well as some representatives from the club. If you have any questions about the letter, but basically to summarize the letter, members from the Tokenique Club for many years have used the paddle courts at the Ox Ridge Hunt Club. And they were hoping to continue that joint relationship that they had. However, when the commission put that new cap on membership of the new Riding and Racket Club, there was a question of how that would work with the Tokenique Club members, because if you can imagine, if all the Tokenique Club members just were there to play racket and it didn't count, so they had to come up with a solution. And we asked Amy to put together a proposal that the commission could review and approve, in that it would still count as membership, towards the membership, but not, if you will, at the full rate, because they wouldn't be using the full facilities of the club. They wouldn't be riding horses, they wouldn't be using the dining rooms,
The workout
the
facilities, the
workout,
squash
all
courts.
the squash courts. They would only be, they would be kind of paddle-only members.
And-
So they could park the car, use the paddle courts, run to the restrooms,
And it's
That's
very
it.
seasonal.
and
Yeah.
and that's the other thing, Kevin, that's kind of an off-season thing to balance it out. So Amy has put forth a description of how they would, how, if you will, suggested proposal to count Tokenique members as, I'll call it 1/10 of a regular member, because they would probably be there about 1/10 of the time, and the impacts would be, if that. So,
And I was just gonna say that the seasonality is, so I was involved in kind of the conceptual ideas through staff, how one would think about this, and seasonality is pretty important too. You don't play paddle during the peak seasons of, horsing and equestrian activities, so,
I'd like to comment on
go
that.
ahead.
The only thing, I don't disagree with it, it was a seasonal sport. At Middlesex Club, it's gone to 12 months.
it has gone, I agree.
And there is a new spring paddle tennis court at Middlesex Club that some of the other 3 clubs, including New Canaan, practice in. So I don't disagree that the fact historically it's been seasonally. There is a new spring paddle circuit that started. So you have to temper that with your
Correct.
idea.
So how would you temper? No spring, I mean.
You could say that you can only play paddle between X months and X months and make it seasonal. But the sport in it of itself between Darien and New Canaan clubs has gone 12 months a year.
I think, and Amy's here, she can certainly speak for herself or her client. I think one of the things Amy mentioned is the need for the Riding and Racket Club to attract and maintain their members, the full-paying members, the full-time members. And I think some of it for them would be the importance of them having the club and full access to the club. And I think there would be a detriment if they oversold or found that the use was too heavy. I think the Riding and Racket Club might not be happy about that. So it might, in a way, self-regulate itself.
Yeah, and I mean, there's still, even though it goes all season long, there's
12 people,
I haven't seen that many at Weaver and doing it yet. but-
I don't disagree with that.
So there is a seasonal aspect. I guess if it got out of hand and they overran the site, then we'd have to address it. But as written, I'm basically in favor for this amendment. Anybody else want to?
I am a member of Tokenie Club,
Okay.
for disclosure, and yes, I don't play any paddle though, and I'm fine with this, yeah. In fact, I would
You
suggest.
probably might want to just be a member of Tokenie, just maybe think about abstaining.
Yeah.
Just because you have a personal benefit,
I guess,
just to be safe.
okay.
But that's your choice. You wanna
Okay.
do it. Seriously. Kev?
I got no huge issue other than, if we want to put some month usages to it. I don't really care. But,
Just as is, or?
Fine.
Okay. Steve?
we all knew that, I certainly knew when they came in for this original application that Tokenique was using
Still,
those paddle courts
yeah.
and was going to continue. I think I even asked.
Well, Tokenie owns the paddle courts,
Right,
and
they were-
leases the
yeah,
land, so
they
it
were
was
leased.
actually a problem
Yeah.
for them, because they'd have to
Yeah.
pack them up and move them somewhere, something like that.
Right, I think that came up. I'm fine with that.
Comments?
I would just make it like 10 months a year.
So
Pick 2 months and make it not be
I
there.
would put it in
July
July and
or-
August. Okay.
Or June, July.
I'm okay either way, I could take it the way it is.
I'd rather take it the way it is,
All right, I got,
because it's still capital membership, right?
Yeah.
10-1.
It's still limited.
all right, I got suggestion to put a 10-month limit on it. Do I hear another second to that? All right, so we'll just take it as it is. Based on what I'm hearing, I need a motion to approve as submitted.
Motion to approve is submitted?
Can I get a second? All in favor?
I'll abstain.
And one,
No, I'm fine.
you're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we just received the report from the Andrew Shaw Memorial Scout Cabin. I believe Jeremy's gonna post this on the website.
Yep.
And then I think what we're gonna do is have an executive session to discuss some pending litigation regarding this item. And we can discuss kind of our feedback and the report with our counsel. And hopefully at that time, we also have an offer related to the pending litigation. So we'll move on, but keep this copy in your
When is that
contact.
going to be, John? Do you know?
June 25th. But John, if any neighbor wants a copy, we'll have copies available in the office as well, hard copies.
Yep, okay, so hard copies, but we'll also put it on the web as well.
Yep.
So we're not going to talk about this?
No, not until we talk about the pending litigation, which I think is a good idea.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Is that okay?
yeah, I
mean,
have comments, but we can do it.
Okay.
Me to read it?
Yeah,
Item number 4, landfilling and regrading application number 425 Hughes, 18 Winding Lane. Modification of previously approved plans for pool, regrading, and retaining walls.
so this item, I think we all got hand-delivered comments from a neighbor related to the I guess amendment, if you will. I think when we put this on as a general meeting item, we didn't understand that there was some sensitivity with neighbors, so it wasn't proper, we put it on as general meeting item and not a public hearing item. It's my proposal that we reschedule this item so that we can give proper notice to the neighbors. The applicant can have more time to pull together better plans, maybe even have discussions with some of his or her neighbors, and then have a full kind of public hearing like we did recently. I think, Jeremy, you might just want to give a quick background of why this has been brought forward to us?
Sure, you may recall in January 2018, the commission approved a regrading project for Mr. Hughes at 18 Winding Lane. It was a proposal for an in-ground pool with a retaining wall in the back. The back of the property sloped down. Since then, the applicant has started constructing the pool. The pool was constructed in the wrong place. So the plans you have before you would be to modify the pool location, the pool's elevation relative to the ground, and modify the proposed retaining walls such that the walls would not be in the back of the property, but on the sides of the pool. So it's a different proposal than what you saw.
And so again, when we first got the application, we thought it was pretty minor, but we understand now there's sensitivity from the neighbors. So what I'd love to do is reschedule this item as a public hearing item. The applicant will have to notice all the neighbors, and then staff can guide what the commission will be wanting to look at in a little more detailed manner.
Sure.
So what date do we have available?
The next available date would be in July, either the 9th or the 16th.
Is the applicant here?
I'm a representative of the construction company.
All right, would you just mind coming forward, and maybe we can figure out a date?
The neighbors are here also and like to attend that.
Yeah, no, we're trying to come to a date
My name is
that the
Matthew
applicant
Patterson.
is here.
I'm a
I'm sorry,
representative
we
of-
had too many people speaking at once.
Okay.
My
Could you
name is
give me your name again, please? I'm sorry.
Matthew Batterson. I'm a representative of Relations Construction, who is the contractor for the pool project.
Do you have a preferred date that,
Sooner the better.
okay, so,
July 9th would be the next available date.
okay. And so, staff will be in communication with you and then proper
Absolutely.
noticing and that sort of thing, but I want to make it, that's a process we handle with these types of applications. I just want to make it a fair process, so, thank you very much.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Next item, please.
Number 5, flood damage prevention application number 366, Darien Historical Society, 45 Old Kings Highway North, request for an extension of time to commence project.
This is something we saw, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something?
That's correct. This is a straightforward request from Robert Pascal, the Historical Society. I believe he's here with former commission member Joe Spain, if you have any questions, but I think the proposal's simple enough to understand, and I recommend approval.
Yeah, so do I. Anybody else have any comments?
This was an
a year?
addition.
No, I'm sorry, the extension. What are
They're
we
asking
looking
for 15 months to
Okay.
next October.
I would say even maybe 18 months, just so they don't have to come back again. Anybody okay, everybody okay with
Yes,
18 months?
I'm-
Okay, so let's just make it to the end of,
2020.
yeah.
Okay.
Everybody's in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take that as a unanimous yes vote. Okay, next one, Kevin.
Number 6, subdivision application number 615, Mike Nicholas for Silver Lakes Drive, request to allow construction at 4 Silver Lakes Drive to commence prior to previously approved construction of sidewalk along Tokenique Road.
This is one that was related to subdivision. The commission had a simple request, or what we thought was simple, to add a sidewalk basically on the other side of Tokenique Road from Tokenique School, right alongside the property. I don't know how many of you got to read the email between the state and the applicant, but it's silly, almost, the delays that the state has created for the applicant. And he had to come back once before, for a CO related to that too,
Right,
right?
we originally, there was, when the, I'll call it, it's timing relative to the first house, and Mr. Nicholas came before you to get a CO with the condition that, okay, the sidewalk will now be tied to the new house at number 4. The good news, Mr. Nicholas emailed me earlier today, some progress has been made with DOT, so that's good news, that it's moving along in terms of, because now they need easements, and the easements have to be written, that the DOT attorneys start getting involved, because et cetera, et cetera. And as you saw from the paperwork, they want a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk, because that's what they want. So, the question Mr. Nicholas has put forth is, he wishes to, and Mike's here to answer any questions, get started with the foundation for number 4 while he wraps up the paperwork for DOT.
Sidewalk.
So the good news is, based on that email today, we seem to have broken the logjam a little bit, which is good.
I mean, it's a multi-month logjam that you finally kind of see some
Yeah,
progress.
so that's the good news, is this morning was good news that we got through the review of some of the paperwork, such that if the commission wants, I would feel comfortable tying any work above the foundation for number 4, I would expect Mike Juth, you can come up here and answer the question, which I'm sure the commission's gonna ask, is, do you think, based on your correspondence with DOT, that being that this is June, maybe before October this year?
Should I state the name for?
Yes,
I know it's
please,
painful to see me all.
I know it's not your fault.
Recognize my
It's
face
not
by
your
now
fault.
with this project. I would expect probably work to be scheduled within a month time. So we're getting to a point where we're moving into permit applications.
Wow,
The unknown part again is with the state, like, I'm doing what I need to do on my part almost the same day. How long it's gonna take them, hopefully it wouldn't take them long, so.
okay.
And it may fall into a perfect timing when kids are out of school, and if we can do it then, that'd be great.
Okay, so I would recommend tying, again, what is it, basically, the sidewalk completion to the CO, or,
So that you can either do it, right now it's tied, he can't start work on number 4. What
understood,
he's saying is, allow me to start the foundation for 4,
okay.
but not work above the foundation.
Would I apologize to
Go ahead.
correct this, so the surety for performance in a way is the CO for new build. It's gonna cost more to build a new house, I can sell it, can't do
Understood.
anything with it. So it's 100% performance bond that you have it.
Yep.
And you've seen all the plans, you've seen.
You've done everything we've
and
asked. and
As
it's-
transparent
yeah.
as it can be. We're moving forward, we wanna do it, we will do it as soon as we get to go ahead.
Okay,
But the approval that we have on the next house, on number 4, is the time-sensitive approval from this commission. And the fact that we can't do any work, I may have to come back and see you again, because
Okay,
we
so-
may run out of time.
so, I asked the commission members, why wouldn't we just tie the sidewalk to the CO at this point?
Why?
Because we've asked him to do something that is getting held up by the bureaucracy of the state.
He's being penalized.
He's
by
being
s-
penalized by
the
our issue
Yeah.
to add a sidewalk that, not even on his is it on your property or is it on the right of way?
No, it was his, it was
I'm sorry.
I'm happy to do it,
Yeah.
it's
I get it.
it's not
Yeah.
an issue for me.
Now, I'm answering a question, so I just want to make sure, is it on your property or no?
Well, part of the sidewalk will have to be on my property now, whereas before, it was to be on a public right of way, the cost is double, but, it's,
Yeah. Okay, so that, the answer to your question is, he continuously has gotten delayed by the state and been penalized by something that we have no control over, he has no control over, so at least let him get to the, commence with the building of his second home. And he will not be able to move in unless the sidewalk is built.
I have a question, though. If the sidewalk was built at 5 feet, there wouldn't be any holdup?
No, he's got to do it to state standards, and that's been the
Which is 5
whole.
feet.
5 feet is the state standard, 4 feet is his amendment request.
Right, and the state said no. He said, can I do a 4-foot, right now, you've seen it, it's a little pathway.
Right?
So Mike said, can I do
Asphalt.
4 feet asphalt? The state said, no, we want 5 feet, 5 feet concrete.
Right?
Mike said, well, then part of it's on my property, and it would extend onto my property because it would be too wide to fit in the right of way. Then DOT came back and said, okay, great, now you need to provide a pedestrian easement on your property. So now you need to go have a surveyor prepare a map showing the easement will have to be filed in land records. And Mike said, great, I can do that too.
Okay.
We
so
just
it is
wanna
gonna
see
be 5 feet, and it is gonna have
5
an
feet
easement.
concrete.
We cannot.
Okay.
The original thought was he was gonna just put in a little pavement pathway, just like exists all the way up and down Tokenique. I mean, it's just,
But it's been like that since the beginning, because they did the same thing on 106, it's a state road. We knew that going in 2
Yeah.
to 3 years ago. It's always been the same way.
I didn't.
Well, I did.
Okay, so the proposal on the table is to allow him to have some sort of extension on the second property so that he can commence with construction while they now finalize the plans for the sidewalk. Sir?
One question.
Hmm?
And this, I don't know whether it's for you or for Jeremy. Do I not recall that the original approval for the first house, the CO was dependent on the completion of the sidewalk?
Correct.
Correct.
Does he have, you have the CO? for
Yes,
the
thank you very
first
much. Yes,
house?
we do.
You
Yes.
do.
Because the commission, he came back to the commission and said, the house is done.
All right.
That's great.
Fine, that's all I have. If he's
I agree
asking
with
for
you.
the,
I
for
agree.
the,
So now the ball's
Nothing
moving to,
above the-
now the ball's moving to the second house, but I would keep it to the foundation, not the CO of the house.
Right. Anybody for the foundation?
well, that's what he's asking for. right?
Correct, that's what he's asking for.
No, he's not, no,
But John's
The-
changing
the-
it to the
the
house.
only-
I am not.
no, he's not.
The only caveat to it, and I'm also being respectful to your time, if for whatever reason we're held back by the state with, whatever it may be, I mean, nobody had thought that this was gonna take this long. But then I would have to come back to you and ask you for,
Perhaps CO for that home can be used as the performance surety instead. John did not
Okay, I
write this.
apologize.
And I agree. I don't think it should be tied to the foundation. I think it's. He's not gonna
So
move to
the
close
question
it.
on the table is whether or not we want to amend to the CO as proposed.
Yes,
I would vote in favor of
yeah, you should.
CO.
Yes. Favor.
1, 2, 3,
I mean, foundation or,
I'm foundation.
okay. I'm
I'm
CO, that's
foundation.
4. So we're gonna
Okay.
move forward with, as requested
thank you
by the
very much.
applicant. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Deliberations and possible decisions regarding the following items. Mr.
Administrative section number 339, number 1-2019, Joe Pagliarolo, 40 Swifts Lane. Proposal to create a rear building lot and associated with division of the 2.17 acre subject property under the first division section of the Connecticut General Statutes and construct a new shared driveway. The two proposed lots under section 339 of the Darien zoning regulations have less than the required lot width at the frontage with Swifts Lane. Decision deadline 7/19/19.
All right, so this one we pushed a couple weeks to get all 6 of us here. When we originally deliberated, it was, if I remember, either 4 or 5 in favor, 1 against. I just wanted to make sure everybody had a voice in the final vote. So, did I miss anything?
what?
Just get
I'm
us,
sorry, I didn't hear what he said.
All right, so this was the subdivision application that
Yes.
when we originally deliberated, there was a sense of the meeting to move forward with an approval. It was either 4 or 5 to 1. We pushed the last 2 meetings
I didn't get a
because,
sense in the meeting that there was push forward for approval on this. Did I read the whole meeting wrong?
But I thought we were going to give a little time, John, to review the
Yeah.
application.
so I pushed it it's been on the last 2 agendas.
I think it was on 2 different agendas,
There was.
because I remember Fred and I had to change the date.
Did anybody get any comments from anybody?
No comments.
So I can push it again.
No, but my point was, I thought that the last meeting, we decided we would discuss it at this meeting. So my
Oh, yeah,
comments.
yeah, this is deliberating.
Right.
Yeah, but
My
it was- I'm
comments-
just telling you the history, it was written as a positive because there was discussions pointing in that direction prior to this. This is the,
Third meeting that we're talking about,
Yes.
correct?
I think it's a tough one.
I will remind everybody, it's a administrative approval.
So,
And staff at the original, and as much as we do not like it, staff at the original deliberations walked through every point. It seemed to meet every point. So I just caution you that you make sure your decisions are around substantive regulations, that this would not fit.
Right. The applicant proved that you can build 2 building houses there
Well,
on
it's not,
legal
I don't
lots.
think it's a matter of being able to prove you can build. I think it's an issue. I think the issue is whether this is a rear lot of already a rear lot, right?
Yeah,
Like,
so pointing to the map, when you really look at this from the air and the neighborhood, this piece of property is deep at the end and behind this residence right above it. So it's a rear lot. The driveway, Swift Lane comes down to here and then jets over here. This is actually flagpoling past this house to this rear lot. This house is already sitting rear of the house right north of it. So my argument is that subdividing this piece of property would be double, making 2 homes in a rear lot behind the first.
So you disagree with staff?
I guess so.
Well, see, that
Can we
was,
go through the standards again? 'Cause we're
is that a
gonna,
rear lot? Because that was.
Well, I guess that's the question, is,
because we gotta go through every standard to make sure.
you can't have a rear lot under section 339 behind another rear lot.
Doesn't say anything specific about a private street?
No, it would be
It's
on
also-
private or public street.
Okay.
So the question here, under 339D, no rear lot shall be positioned behind another rear lot. So the question is, as Liz mentioned, this is at the terminus. So we've all seen rear lots through time, and usually they're on the same road. So the question here is this rear lot behind another rear lot? You can, the locus map, as Liz was on the map.
Do you want me to pass this over? I mean, it's very clear, if you look at this map, as opposed to from this, that this Swift Lane comes in and then ends, and then this is just a little jet down to the rear lot, which is the Pagliaro Lugo property. See?
So that's my issue.
The road
No, I-
ends, and then they... And then there was also, right,
Does it fit the
Mr. Ginsburg,
definition of
that
a rear lot? I guess, what's the definition of a rear lot, I guess, is what we need to be really careful of.
Right, 'cause that's what we pressed Doug McDougal on from William Seymour.
Okay, the definition of rear lot:
Oh, I saw it.
a lot having access to the street via a strip of land that is part of the rear lot, and where the buildable area is generally located to the rear of other lots having frontage on the same street.
it's clearly rear of another lot having frontage on the same street.
Right? You can have a rear lot next to each other, right? So we've had situations in town where you have 2 front lots and 2 rear lots.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of that, Jeremy?
Long Neck Point.
Yeah, Long Neck Point that we did the subdivision on.
Driftway Lane, I've seen a bunch.
I think up on Brookside Road, the north part of Brookside Road, near Stephen Mather, there were 2 front lots and 2 lots behind them with the access ways along the side. You can't have a rear lot behind a rear lot.
Oh, is that the one where we had the issue with the driveway?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. God, I've been here.
So on Long Neck Point Road, there's a couple situations where you have front lots and rear lots behind them. You have rear lots next to each other, but you can't have front lot, rear lot, and another rear lot behind it.
It's tricky.
Yeah. And so the determination would be,
McDougal said it's not.
yeah, well,
McDougal said it was not. I mean, I pressed the surveyor, and he changed the survey twice about all the rear lot lines, because on the zoning text box was not on the first survey. He added to the second survey. Then I said, what's the rear lot line, what's the front
yeah, I
lot line?
remember that. We did.
And he did all that stuff. Because I said the survey was not marked rear, front, side. And then he redid it to mark it rear, front, side, so it says exactly what it is.
But that is, by the definition you read, I mean, Jeremy, what do you?
Right.
It's confusing, because it
Right.
looks like
Jeff
a rear
McDougal
lot.
at the hearing pointed out where the proposed residences would be, and where there's a residence behind another residence, there's a 90-foot setback. We didn't, at the hearing, we really didn't talk about rear lot, another rear lot behind it.
I asked him which was the rear lot, which was the front lot,
The way
and
he's-
that's why he's got it 30 plus 60 gets 90 feet.
But those are between the 2, not between this house.
Correct.
Right.
You're
He
100%
didn't, so
correct.
we didn't, yeah, we didn't answer, I think we
Well,
didn't ask
he-
the right question.
He talked about the
Reclose
street
the
frontage as well, and the way the street came into both, well, the single property, and that was his frontage to the street, so in my mind, he answered whether or not that was a rear
It's
lot by
frontage on the
showing
street,
the
that's the
frontage on the
Have
street.
any of you driven down to it?
Oh,
I
yeah.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
It's,
Yeah, I
I
think.
mean,
we
it's
didn't
back
ask-
there, it's,
we-
again,
I don't
you
think
know.
we asked the right questions, quite honestly. I think we missed
Correct.
this specific question.
Right, so you're
Because we talked about the rear lot of the subdivision,
I mean,
which we
that's
answered that question, but actually
questionable, yeah.
it's the house in front of it.
That
right?
is the front,
Which would
yeah.
make this a rear lot if we had asked that question, then that also we didn't.
No, he showed us the street
Because
frontage.
that's got the
on
street
No,
frontage.
the
line.
street frontage is here, the house is here.
My interpretation is he showed us the street frontage.
the street frontage is the 50 feet on Swift's Lane.
Yeah.
Right, but it's behind the other house.
No, it's not, it's
No, it's
directly on Swift's Lane. That's the
I mean,
street
from what I understand, this is
That's what he
This is
presented.
the
Yeah, I
line
get
of
it.
Swift's Lane, this is the line of the applicant's
So he
property,
has.
from here down, right?
Correct, there's frontage on Swift Lane of 50 feet on this lot and on that side,
Where do you see 50 feet?
right underneath it, and right
No,
there.
no, no, but this is the end of Swift's Lane.
Right. Yeah,
The end of Swift's Lane is at the end of his property.
yeah, there,
This is the end of
Yeah.
Swift's Lane,
correct.
right here.
Right, well, then this would be the, excuse your finger, just,
Right.
this would be the same distance here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's his frontage,
58 feet.
For this lot.
Yeah, 58
Yeah.
feet.
right.
Right. What about this one?
Then this one, that's why.
That's why this isn't a rear lot yet.
This is
They-
the front lot, that's the rear lot. What Liz is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you're calling this the front lot, not the rear lot.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is
That-
a
the
rear
sort
lot of a rear
As it
lot.
sits.
Right, so, but
What do you think?
the way the applicant said is this is the frontage they have on Swift Lane.
But where's the frontage? So.
You don't need frontage on that.
Because it's shared with that one. This is the shared road.
And is there
Guys,
is there a requirement of frontage?
Yeah, that's,
to be-
Yes.
Yes.
For a rear lot, you need a minimum amount of frontage, and that no portion of the lot between the street line and the building shall have a lesser width than the frontage. In other words, you can't have your frontage and then go narrower. It has to be the frontage, so I think Jeff McDougal has drawn it up such that the frontage is 50 feet, and it never gets narrower than 50 feet, because it can't. And so the way
Oh, that's why this is so wide.
I mean, I pressed him to solve, and that's what the text box.
you're gonna draw lines all over.
Right, I draw lines all over the place.
So in
Show
this,
me,
Because this is the old map, this doesn't have the text box, right? There's only text
so
box.
assuming
Assuming
that this lot isn't a rear lot, let's just assume that.
Well,
Just assume that for a second, that this whole thing right today isn't a rear lot, right?
correct, that's the
Okay.
assumption you have
Okay,
to make to move
I
forward.
got it, I got it. So, if you subdivide this lot, right, does that make this, I don't see how,
This is the lot, this is the rear lot to that lot.
yeah, but then, doesn't that lot have, the question is, now the front lot have any frontage on Swift's Lane?
Yeah, it would-
Aren't you
yeah.
creating a rear lot?
Yeah, aren't they sharing the same frontage?
You don't,
That's the definition.
I would say,
of lot.
no, they each have 50 feet of frontage. One has 50 feet of frontage on the eastern half of Swift's Lane. One has 50 feet of frontage on the southern part of Swift's Lane. And as I was telling Jennifer, my interpretation when I was working with Jeff and Fred and I met with him and Mr. Pagliarulo a number of times, is that these are two lots side by side, and that one is behind the other, but we didn't find the rear lot behind a rear lot.
But so where does, I think that I'm getting confused, is where does Swift Lane end? Doesn't Swift Lane end at this line, which is the beginning of the applicant's property? This is the end of Swift Lane.
By definition, Swift's Lane can't be on their property,
So how does
can it?
this, what is this what is this delineation, these octave?
Proposed graph paver. Is that what you're saying? That proposed
Yeah,
grass paver.
Pavers.
that are gonna go onto Swift Lane,
Which is a,
up off the property
right,
of,
which again, is a private road. That's where the issue also comes in.
Well,
Like
they
the other
they
guy
do-
can't-
they don't
put
have to
whatever they
build
want,
that,
but,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
but-
but this is the line that ends Swift Lane. Swift Lane ends here. So how can they both have frontage on Swift Lane when this is the only connection to Swift Lane? Right?
I think
Jeremy,
what-
right here.
Yeah, I think what they, this little box here, I'll call it the top left corner of the map, which is.
Right, but it's cut out of the applicant's property.
Right, to extend the street,
50.
to create
It's
the
private
frontage.
street.
They can just sell
Yeah.
that piece of the street to the
Given,
association.
given its
create more
easement.
road frontage, and they showed proposed, to prepare a better turnaround in the future.
Is there a Swift Lane Association that's agreeing to this?
I don't know if they have to agree.
So you can just extend a private road?
Yeah, it would be.
The other house is right here.
Yeah, sure.
And just file it at the town and be like, look, I donated this corner of my property? And then if they
Again,
donate
they don't
out
have to
this
do-
corner of their
they-
property, do they still have
They
the
don't have to
acreage
do-
to subdivide?
They don't have to donate anything, because it's all private.
Because I know, I live on a private association.
So they don't have to donate. You just
If I
donate.
gave 100 square feet of my land to the Ridge Acres Association Road, I would have to be donating my property to Ridge Acres.
Again,
So what they
No,
show.
this is
But they
important, these are important delineations. It would no longer be the applicant's property. And if it is still the applicant's property, then this is the only frontage for two home sites.
that wasn't presented to us like that. He showed two areas of frontage, and no
Right, but
one,
I get, I get,
I
I
don't
get, I
understand
get
where
it.
they
I
are.
get it, but I guess we're questioning.
And if they
We
do,
weren't,
if
we weren't
this
asking the
is-
right questions, right?
again, I mean,
Also
We're trying to
important
check
is
the
if
boxes.
if they do cut this out and say this is Swift Lanes now, what's the area of this
Right.
remaining?
They've
lot.
shown it as 1.00, which is,
Yep.
would leave this 1.0, and that 1.17 would
Because that's where-
extend, it would be this, I'll call it more of a, when you turn it this way, that flag lot, if you will.
they only need that original 50
Oh, so I'm
to
looking at the
go.
wrong map,
Yeah, I think we're
Yours
looking
is,
at
yeah,
it.
yours
because
is
it's not carved out to be Swift's Road anymore. It's carved out to be the
What's the date of
applicant's
yours?
property.
This is, March 15th.
Mark, May 15th.
This one's
Yeah,
March.
this is March 15th.
What's the yours versus this?
See, mine doesn't have, mine shows, Swift Lane ends, and this is the top of the applicant's property.
Got it.
So that's why I didn't understand
See.
how both driveways were
These
touching
two-
Swift Lane.
These two are different.
All right, so just to be clear, in order to pursue this,
Okay, so
They
then
need
I
one-
see it, I see it.
they need 1 50-foot frontage, right? To
They each-
pursue.
they each do.
They
Okay.
each need their frontage,
Right,
correct?
they each have it, one,
We have
two.
it.
All right, yeah, this map shows it.
Okay.
Right,
But they're doing it by extending Swift's Lane.
Understood.
correct. And no part of the lot can be reduced below 50 feet. That's 339A.
The road.
339B is the grade and alignment of the narrow part of the lot shall be adequate for a driveway and provide safe and convenient access. C, the intersection of the driveway with the street shall be safe in terms of sightlines, gradient. One of the driveways pretty much can be the existing, the one that shoots to the left. And D is no rear lot shall be positioned behind another rear lot. And then it talks about how to measure the setbacks for rear lots, which Jeff McDougall went through at the hearing, which is
But that's what he
339.
added. That's the 90-foot here, the 40-foot there, there's no, he added this line here.
Again, I don't like it, but I feel like the applicant proved that he meets our zoning regs, and that's our only thing that we have to
I'm a
do.
little confused about the, just taking a piece of his property and calling it Swift's Lane suddenly. And in a private road I live on, we have all these rules, and anything that, like that would happen would have to get voting approval from the
Well, if
association,
you-
but mine's
yeah.
large.
And if he wasn't able to do this carve-out, then he would not be able to proceed with the, remember, he's gotta come back for each lot, so if somebody from Swift Lane said no way, or the association, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Can we condition the approval on his ability to get whatever approval he needs from the Swifts Lane Association. I'm assuming that's what it is.
If there is indeed
We
one,
don't know if
yeah.
there's an association.
So, I mean, the issue, John, is.
Yeah, I get it, I
like,
get it.
If you live in a private road, right, you want to subdivide your home, and you can create a rear lot by just calling a part of your driveway Country Club Road now, and now you're good, right? That really kind of doesn't meet the spirit of the regulation, I don't think.
You're talking on a private street, right, which is Country Club Road's private, or?
I was just.
I don't understand.
Yeah. So like if I want to subdivide my property, and I live on a private street, you know,
I get
Maple
it.
Street, right?
I get it.
Can I just call my driveway Maple Street now, and then I have 50 feet of frontage on my property?
There must be, because from what I understand, private roads are not plowed by the town.
That's correct.
So there has to be some association that's paying for plowing.
It doesn't.
It doesn't have to be anything
The-
official. Yeah.
Yeah, the homeowners associations for private streets varies greatly in terms of formality. The Tokenique Association is, I would call it the most formal. They collect taxes, they pave the roads, they
Plow.
asphalt plow. Some roads,
Sure.
some roads less so.
End of Point of Woods where the private area is, the homeowners just get together and
Hillcrest.
throw
Yeah,
together.
there's a
some-
few.
Right, because it's very few of them, right?
So-
Hillcrest, there's a bunch of houses on Hillcrest, and one guy collects the money for the plowing.
So, where do we
It's like
stand here?
insurance and a board and everything.
So I see the main issue, whether or not you want to agree with the applicant, whether or not he meets the standards of having the 250-foot frontages or not. What's the deadline on this one?
We do have time. The hearing was continued to May 14th, so the commission has till July 14th or July 19th to make a decision. So we can kick this to
Well, I don't
another
want to,
date.
so
if you
I
wish.
want to get a sense of the meeting, whether or not we're going to stick with a positive kind of referral that we discussed earlier, or now, not referral, decision, or if we should ask you to draft a negative based on that. So, could I get a sense?
But I would make sure that Jeremy makes, the hearing's closed, you can't reopen the hearing, right?
Correct.
Correct.
But Jeremy's got to make, or staff's got to make a determination if we're going to prove it as rear allowed or not, I mean, two
Well, I'll check with
frontages or
town
not.
council on that question if you wish,
Yeah.
on the private road
Yeah.
question.
And if you
Because
can-
it's a
if
legal
you can
question.
simply just extend a road, right, to make,
Yeah, I'm less, I thought no, because I was looking at the map that didn't explain in my mind how he was carving out that land, have 250-foot. I thought there was just one approach to Swifts, but then I am confused. I want to just make sure that just calling that corner of his
Okay.
property Swifts
So
is
if
legal or,
If council gives us a kind of negative answer on that, then can you be prepared to start drafting a negative?
If that's the sense from the commission,
Yeah,
that,
I think that we would agree. If they cannot do that, the majority would point towards, no, it doesn't fit our regulations. Is that true?
correct.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
but Google has to be wrong on his
And I remember vividly when, you can go back and watch a tape, he did specifically call out extending the road and adding those turning areas and
Yeah, I
making
must
it
not have
better.
followed.
So that's, I remember that.
if you want, I can, it was two,
Do you have that map handy, the revised one, that's more recent,
I have
the survey?
Yeah, the one dated May 15th, right
May I
here.
see that for a second?
Sure, but I can also point the commission, I can get the two Vimeos out to you.
Yeah.
They were pretty short
Yeah.
hearings, so I can do that. I'll do that.
I think I would want to see some kind of approval from a Swifts
We
Lane.
can't, at this point.
Well-
It's not legal counsel to tell us.
So I would then, right, okay, and then, or then I would say no, but it can come back if it had more explanation on the road
Okay.
extension.
So this survey with the zoning text box that I requested, that's certified by the surveyor, says minimum frontage for Lot A, 50.01 feet,
There you go, right there.
right, which is there. Minimum lot frontage for Lot B is 50 feet flat.
right. But-
And how
we're
wide-
not-
how
we're not
wide is the
disagreeing- We're not
existing
disagreeing with the
frontage?
frontage here. We're disagreeing with, if Swift Lane ends there and they're extending Swift's Lane to here, are you meeting the spirit of this law, right? Can you just simply
Right, yeah, I
extend
get
it,
it, yeah.
extend it?
So that's the question that's going to
Yep.
council.
You know,
Yep.
I don't
Okay.
recall him saying that he's extending the road, but if that's.
Yeah, I think he did.
He's clearly doing
Because
some
he
kind
did, he
of,
talked about all this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to ask council, how does one go about extending a private road in the town of Darien?
Okay.
All right, so that gets continued.
Okay.
Thank you, good questions.
I think that was good, John. I think-
Oh, no, great questions.
Move on.
Yep.
Number 8, landfilling or grading application, number 457 Charles Gruler, number 20 Birch Road, proposal to regrade the rear yard, create a level yard, and perform related site development activities. The subject property is located on the east side of Birch Road, approximately 1,000 feet north of its intersection with Boston Post Road, and is shown on the district map number 13, is lot number 39 in the R1 half zone.
I'm not gonna vote on this one, just because I didn't get a chance to watch it, but anybody have comments on it?
Close to your
Okay
house?
with it.
I had no comments on this one.
Yep.
All right. So,
Motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
I did watch, I'm fine.
okay, all in favor?
5-0, one extension.
Okay, perfect.
Number 9, business site plan application number 136D, special permit application number 231A, landfilling and regrading application number 455 George at Work LLC, 2 Squad Lane, proposal to renovate and expand the footprint of the existing building for the purposes of establishing a new 2-story quick service restaurant with an outdoor dining area and associated retail bakery. On the basement level, construct a new patio, staircase, handicap, access ramp, and extend to the eastern side of the property from Squad Lane. Create a parking and perform related site development activities. Public hearing closed 5/28/19. Decision deadline 8/1/19.
So one of the follow-ups we had with staff was just to grab now with these hour limits, these are what was written in the resolutions, right?
That's correct.
And in many cases, they're proposed by the applicants, I would
Yes, the example Fred and I found kind of interesting was the bakery flour, water, salt. You might remember Rob, the baker, came before the commission, talked about his hours. Early morning hours, he closes, 1, 2 in the afternoon.
When he sold out.
But, yeah, when he sells out, usually that's what happens first. And the commission held him to the hours, even though, as I mentioned, on the back end, it's not really going to impact anyone whether it closes at 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, 1 in the afternoon. But that was just recited back. But these are the hours, and in some cases, you could see it would be something the commission might be concerned about. In other cases, you look at this and say, why was that? I think it was just recited
Bodega's
back.
great, like 6:30, like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it gives them flexibility in the future if they wanted
Just
to.
saying. Okay, so
They're making tortillas.
any questions, comments?
I mean, I did not know Subway was up until midnight.
Yeah.
That was news.
And now it's not here anymore.
Yeah.
We're on a Heights Road, it is.
Is that the Heights Road
Okay.
again?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
And Cafe Neo's 5:30 to 9, it's not on here though.
Yeah, I mean, good representation. Again, I think what happens is, as Jeremy said, they remain open where the business hours lie.
Yep,
And,
absolutely.
Yeah, go, take a look, well, if you're going that way, take a look at downtown after we get done with this meeting. Actually, some things might be open if we keep moving along, so.
Stop talking.
Okay, so, question, any other
We
comments?
could extend their hours.
Yeah, any other comments?
Force them to stay open.
Anybody have any comments? No? Jennifer?
I think you did a good job.
You hit the live entertainment, commission hereby stipulates any live entertainment seats on the premises by 12 midnight Thursday and 10 PM Sunday through Wednesday. All entertainment shall be indoors only. I think what we said, if they want to come back and ask for something out on the deck, they can come do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a logical thing. Let them open, get settled in, and I think the commission would be open to.
We've
future
had
requests.
people come back.
Bet you Nick of the doors and windows will be open.
Yep.
That will be inside.
Or maybe not.
Nick will be-
Anything else?
No, we talked about hours of operation, live entertainment. We talked about the need to return to the Architecture Review Board for some of the details.
So
Go ahead.
The only thing, so and you know, I'm clearly being a stickler about the times, so, you know, if you feel differently, but the 12 midnight on Thursday, does that mean you're closing at 1 AM on Thursday? I just didn't really get that.
Up here, the commission hereby stipulates restaurant may remain open until 1 AM, Thursday through Saturday, and 11 PM Sunday through Wednesday.
Yeah, I just don't really get that, but it doesn't bother anyone else, and
Is the live entertainment tied to alcohol at all? No, right? You're gonna have live entertainment at a coffee house, right, without beer? Is it, I'm asking about state law.
You don't need or the
It's a
question.
cabaret.
I think there's
Right.
different types of liquor permits, is my understanding.
Right, but that's when liquor's involved.
wait, what do you mean? Say, I don't understand the point of your question,
If you have liquor,
right?
right, I think you have to apply for live music with the state. If you don't have liquor, can you still have music, was my question.
Got it.
You can have coffee and
Yeah.
music, I guess so.
Open mic nights.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
I make a
Anything else?
motion to approve as submitted, as
Second.
drafted.
I actually think midnight. I was sorry, I was just re-looking at this. Nothing's past midnight.
Ernie.
Oh, is it?
Well, it wasn't approved, but I mean, the
Oh,
state
it's
liquor
just not-
license.
it's just
one-
not
yeah,
limited.
yeah, yeah.
Bernie's is kind of farther away from homes. You know, there are
Well, he's got
all those
apartments.
condos right there.
above it.
Oh, that's true.
Bernie's was the one that sparked this whole thing.
We do have 1 AM Thursday through Sunday, or Thursday through Saturday.
It should be Friday or Saturday.
And then 11 on the rest.
You don't like.
All right, I mean, it's splitting
11.
hairs,
The
right?
the melting pot's got apartments above it.
Yeah.
Right,
You know,
right.
Get a bar.
Oh, and but then there's all those condos that are at
No
the end of
location.
Squab Lane when it
That's
hits Leroy.
that's- Right, that's the other side of the street. You have to get past melting pot, past meat, past
Whatever.
water flower to get to that.
Right.
No, it's really, from this building, it's just the parking lot and then the condos.
Right.
It's just the parking lot, so the noise will come right.
Come through.
I'm good.
But it's an hour, I don't know.
Train runs through there all day.
Yeah, here I am.
All right,
I made a motion.
can I get a second? I get a second for Kevin, all in favor? All right.
6-0.
Okay, thank you. Now, so what are we gonna do here? So, we have some outstanding items, I guess, on this one. So deliberations only, and I'll just read this, Kevin, because amendments to Darien zoning regulations, COZR number 1, 2019, and Darien zoning map, COZM number 1, 2019, put forth by Darien Planning and Zoning Commission. And so the outstanding item on this one, if I remember correctly, was service business zone.
Right, we had,
And-
I think we came to agreement on, or, let's start with that one.
Okay? So
What
whether-
number is that?
So combining certain business zones within the community, combining the SB and the SBE zones into one service business zone. And at the
Two.
last,
2A.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
sorry, did I say something?
You didn't say anything.
No.
She asked
I
for
just said
number
one number.
Number two.
Sorry,
and
my
then
bad,
I'd
my
find
bad,
it.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
Two things.
So, the one clarification you made was,
Right, the commission asked me to check back with Glenn on that 1,200 square foot. And Fred, Glenn and I spoke earlier this week, I believe, or late last week. And I think our recollection was that as part of the whole premise of simplifying, making things easier, that some of these restrictions were removed such that it's either a yes or a no. It wasn't yes, but you're limited to either 8 seats or 1,500 square feet or 1,200 square feet or some number. And Glenn said that was for convenience of administration, but he saw no reason why the commission would have to eliminate that. You could keep that in. So your choice would be keep it separate zones with or without limits, or combine the zones with or without limits.
okay, so,
But we didn't notice it that way?
Oh, we do.
we can leave it separate,
Correct.
Right, you could leave the 1,200 square foot minimum for indoor customer seating area while still having the service business and service business east zone, or you can combine the zones into one zone and decide to leave in that limit if you wish. It's up to the commission.
Who would that affect anyone existing in SB?
Well, really what we're talking about is the property at the corner of Edgewood and West.
Mhm.
And I think that might be it. That was the most noticeable. Maybe there's one other one that just doesn't come to mind, but, well, Blue Wave Taco got a variance from the zoning board of appeals. That's the corner of Richmond and Post.
So if you eliminated that, then Blue Wave Taco, or then now that, I believe it's closed, whoever took that over would have to go back and get a variance. So, question on the table is, first, do you want to eliminate the minimum size for a restaurant in the regulation?
I would leave it in. I mean, if it's there, it's there for a reason.
Got it, leave it, leave it,
I think I would leave it.
leave it, leave it? That's enough, okay. So then the question is, if we leave it for administration purposes, why wouldn't we want to combine the two into one service business each? Because there was really nothing else.
Or one service business.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, one service business, because there was really nothing else that was differential there.
I agree.
But did we notice it with leaving the size limitation in? That's my only problem.
I think that was our issue.
Oh, are you saying if we combine them and leave it, is that?
Do we need to open the
Is
hearing?
it's
for it?
changing, you're changing your
Yeah,
proposal.
But are you making
No,
it?
you're not changing anything. Because the 1,200 remains,
We're adding it to one.
or the 1,200 exists in both zones now.
Oh, it
You're
does
not-
exist in both.
It does.
Yeah.
You're not
That was
changing
our-
Oh,
anything.
okay, then that's fine.
It would not need to be renoticed or a public hearing reopened on that.
Oh, okay.
Then why do we beat our brains in about this whole thing?
Because of what the application that was brought forth to us. If we took it out, it would kind of be
It was
a slap in the face.
It was, yeah, it was
'Cause
because
Amy's
if we were
advertising-
it was
taking it out,
presented to
Right.
take it out, even though we might not
then a
have
previous
done it.
applicant would be.
Because Amy's advocate is she represented her client that it was changing.
I understood. But
So she must have read
yeah,
something.
yeah.
We'll take another look, but I think if the commission is okay combining the zones, we'll double check. And
I think Amy
if we're
might be-
comfortable, and
Yeah,
if
we
the
can,
commission's
we
comfortable.
can, we can. All right, so you'll
We'll
clarify
check, staff
that.
to check.
Right now, if there's nothing looks nefarious in terms of
Combining.
combining them, we'll go forward with the combination, okay? Okay, so the MU,
Did we close the loop on hotel 7 and 8?
Yeah, we did.
I
Or
still
8 and 7?
support them. I support deleting that for
okay.
reasons
fine
I've
with it.
stated many
Right.
times.
I want to not do it.
Yeah, I think we did that last meeting if we were,
So
So,
it's
so we're
effectively
leaving,
5 to 1.
deleting 7 and 8 in.
We're
7 and
deleting.
8 are staying in.
No, I think, didn't we say we delete it? They
Hold on.
would have to come to us anyway?
last meeting, the sense of the meeting was that hotel motel inn were staying. Is that my recollection?
That's my record.
my
So that meant
recollection.
we were not doing points 7 and 8 on the agenda.
Correct.
Correct. You have to do 8. You have to do something with 8 before you can care about 7.
Right.
Wait,
These are transcribed. So if you keep an 8, then 7 doesn't
Can we
matter.
just take a vote on whether we want hotel motel in or out? If you're in, keep it in, raise your hand.
Keep hotel motel in. That's what we got last meeting. We just wanted to make sure,
Got it.
Okay.
Then we don't talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
but we couldn't add it to office business then, right?
That's correct.
that's correct.
Someone would have to come to us,
Correct.
because that's.
Right.
Okay.
So most of it don't.
Okay, we good? All right, so MU. So I guess let's, we'll just amendments to zoning map COZM number 3, 2019, put forward by the Darien Zoning Commission. And I'll just read the first one. Proposal to amend the Darien zoning map to include certain municipally owned properties and/or properties that fulfill a municipal function in the MU overlay zone, as provided in section 420 of the Darien zoning regulations. So, we would like to discuss. Again, we've had some discussions, I believe some of us were not in favor, some of us were, but please, go ahead, sir.
I've been back and forth on this, but last time we were together, I came down in favor of the municipal use zone. Because if the the town has the option of either using the existing zoning regulations to that specific property that they want to develop, redevelop, or using the MU zone. But including the MU zone increases the obligation of the town to come before us, making it more likely that the citizens are going to have an opportunity to have input into this at an early stage.
Just one addendum, if they exercise an element of the MU zone.
Correct.
Yes.
So if they
Which
want to
could
use
be
the
height,
MU zone.
setbacks, or coverage.
Height,
There are three
setback.
differences.
Okay.
If they want to trigger the MU zone, it also triggers increased scrutiny by our board, right? I'm with you, Jim.
Okay.
Totally 100%.
Via the special permit.
Via the special permit,
Right.
correct.
If, as a case in Token Inc. School, they did not do MU, and they never came in for a special permit.
That's correct.
Oh,
So-
so it actually gives, right, the commission more,
More scrutiny over.
and the town and the public hearing
But
ability.
the MU zone, correct me if I'm wrong, is still an overlay zone. Now, instead of being a float, this proposal is making it
Grounded.
a
overlay.
grounded overlay zone.
Over those
Which you
properties.
can use or don't have to use.
That's correct.
As it stands right now, it's a floating overlay zone.
Correct.
If you have a site, you can do it, so.
You'd have to
Well, you still have to
apply.
apply.
Correct,
for
correct,
it,
you have to apply for it, so we're just helping them with the step by doing it in a blanket on everybody,
Correct.
right? So if the fire department came in and wanted to do, in Northern Heights, the fire department came in and said, we want to apply for an MU zone overlay, the citizens would be able to go against it,
Correct.
right? Whereas the fire department neighbors already came in and said, we're against it. So you can make a spot decision or you make a blanket decision.
Right, so what's a little which didn't get a lot of talk at the hearing is, public schools are permitted as of right, which just requires site plan approval. Other municipal uses like police station, fire department, library, town hall are special permit uses. So regardless of whether they use the MU zone, they need a special permit.
It's really only germane to schools.
The schools would be that tipping point between site plan and
And if
special
they
permit.
want to trigger the MU because they want to get
Third
increased,
story or whatever.
right? They,
Height,
it
Or a
it automatically
setback
triggers
different.
the public hearing.
Yeah.
I love it. Done.
I have to agree.
Favor.
Okay,
Yes.
so for the various
Okay.
town, it appears that the commission has said for the town properties noticed, we'll draft, Fred and I will draft something up for July 9th.
To approve the MU overlay.
So we'll draft something for next time.
Okay. Go ahead, back to you, Kev.
So we're moving on to the number 11 proposed amendments to zoning map put forth by WRE LLC. Right, that one, John?
Yeah.
Proposed to amend the Darien zoning map to rezone a .22 acre portion of 601 Boston Post Road from one family residential, 1/3 acre R1/3 to design business 1 or design business DB, dependent on unrelated pending application COZR 1/2019, COZM 1/2019 before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and to apply the design business and residential DBR overlay zone to that .22 acre portion to match the zoning designation of the balance of the property. The amendments to the zoning district boundaries would run coincident with the property's northernmost lot lines. Public hearing closed June 4th, 2019. That was not very clear. Okay.
Does anybody have any comments on this one?
It's the Halsted property that we changed a lot of other ones followed the same thing, followed the lot lines, the same.
Yeah, I'm
That we're
okay.
doing up and down Post Road.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
So should I motion to approve?
Now, we'll
He's
draft
gotta
something for
draft
Draft
something.
first,
the next available general meeting in July.
Okay. And then.
Sorry, yeah, this
Go
is.
again.
Number 12, amendment to landfilling and regrading application number 341, Scott Lesko, 16 West Elm Street, request to permit as-built conditions to remain on site relative to additional fill being placed on the western portion of the property in contrast to previously approved landfilling or grading application on 341. This includes an increase in height of the new stone wall along the westerly property boundaries to match the new grades. Public hearing closed June 4th, 2019.
All right, after the fact, kind of amendment. So, heard from the neighbors saying they would like to restore the property as originally approved. I think that's basically it in a nutshell. Anybody want to comment first?
I think, yeah, the comment was, where they had issues was actually as-built, and what they wanted changed was not gonna change their visual, and that seemed to be the problem. Like, the guy from across the street coming was a little curious tonight, and the points were pointed out were actually as-built. So that's not gonna change.
Actually, most of them were as planned, as
As
built.
planned,
yeah.
exactly. So, I mean, the application we approved earlier had more of a grading change. I understand it wasn't done, but I really, what they think is gonna happen is not gonna change in the spots
Yeah.
they want. And it's also the runoff is to the back of the property, so that was my primary concern, and the husband was like, yeah, it's not really that much, it's back there. So, I don't know. I think it's gonna make it worse, especially
Can I
around the
just
tree.
ask a quick question?
Sure.
So, from what I understood in our discussion last week, that I remember from that, it was a small portion, that the grade was 1 foot to 2 feet difference,
10%.
which was not huge. But different from the plan, there was a wall, but then we were discussing that the wall, even if we were making it go back to as planned instead of as built, the wall didn't have to come down in any shape or form because it wasn't violating, even if it wasn't as shown on the plan, it wasn't violating any, whereas the grade was in violation, but the wall, I just wanted to double check that even
Good
if we said, oh, yes, the 2 feet, 1 foot, 2 feet, just move that out of the way so it's back to plan. I
Yeah.
don't think the applicant has to change the wall. Is that
So
accurate?
so the question is, if, see, it wouldn't have been, when you go out and check a project, and the wall was built as planned, and they built a 3-foot wall instead, without the fill,
Without
could
the
you approve the site plan? It doesn't match the site plan, right?
Or, for example, we talked about the tree well, right? You saw that the tree well was not on the original plan, but then the tree well was built because of the change in grade. So tree wells in and of themselves don't require a regrading permit.
Right.
But in this case, it was tied to the filling that it became necessary because of the regrading. So Liz's
But, I mean,
question.
because it's not, because we're not talking about 4 feet, because we're talking about 1 foot
Yeah.
at the tree well?
But
feel like the
if you
tree
went
well-
out to the site and you saw the tree well, and it wasn't part of the site plan, could you approve
We
the site?
would, we would say, kind of what Liz is saying is, the amount of fill might not rise to the level, and the wall, in and of itself, the walls don't need the permits. What needs the permit is the fill going up to the wall.
Right, but let me rephrase it. There's a difference between it, and Craig said it, you can build a fence or you can build a wall anywhere you want, you don't need a permit. Between my house and my neighbor's house, there's a rock wall
Yep.
that's
Yep.
supposed to be 3 feet, now it's 1.5 feet. It's gonna cost me $14,000 to make the thing high. The difference between,
Money.
So much money.
Keep going.
the difference between that wall, which can be 3 feet, and this wall, this is a retaining wall.
Yes.
Which is holding back the dirt behind it.
But it would be the same wall
No,
regardless.
it wouldn't be
Yeah,
the
it
same wall, it's a
wouldn't be,
different
yeah,
wall.
it's a different.
No.
I
What are you
asked
talking about?
Craig,
Just-
I asked Craig if that wall was engineered properly, if he could certify it.
And he could.
He can't certify it, so
But
we don't have.
But he wasn't the builder of the wall.
Correct. So no one's certified to the strength and validity of that wall. So the only way, I don't want him to rip it down and take out the 20 feet that it's got to do and lower the wall. But I think you need to have somebody certify, and you're not going to get them to certify because it's past tense, that the wall will stay where it is.
I don't agree.
So, no, I get where you're going,
I
because
do
if you're the
agree.
neighbor, right, and you,
If he
you,
takes-
can I, just let me
The wall
finish
could
the point.
collapse.
If you're the neighbor and you see that extra fill go against your property line, and literally right on the property line, and that wasn't approved, that wasn't looked at by the building department or anything, you do need that wall for that excess fill. So I get where you're going, and I think we started going down this path at the hearing. Like
I'm
if
pretty
we-
sure Craig did
Yeah, he talked about that.
testified that the way that wall was built, that the water is supposed to seep
No,
through it, remember that?
You
But
you
it's-
did.
But
Yeah.
it's 10%, so the fill you're talking about is 10% would be removed. He could put the
No,
wall.
no, I'm not, let me finish the point. The point I'm making is, if I was a neighbor, yes, I'm angry that what happened.
Yeah, but
But
not really.
can I just finish the point? So, the point I'm making, we can't instill penalties. You know, if we could, this would be a prime example of a property that should be penalized, okay?
That would be scary.
Okay, but here's the point. If I'm the neighbor next door, I want to ensure that wall isn't moving, because no one has been able to certify it. Not the town, no one. I
No
mean,
one.
Craig.
I understand, but
There was an
anything can
engineer that
happen
did it.
between neighbors, and that's
Yeah.
what the
Again,
legal
but this,
system is
but
about.
this site plan was
Right.
not built to
You're
what.
on your own property.
But an engineer built the
When
wall.
we do ones along
If
that,
it touched.
when we do ones along that point, right, they come down and it goes down, it goes down, it goes down. They're building walls to step down the property. Those walls, hold on, those walls are built with rebar and designed to hold back the dirt on the upland parcel. This is the same thing between the two. That engineer that designed that wall, it's on the plans, it shows that the wall has been, certified by the engineer that it's gonna hold.
Who was
Right.
the original
Right.
engineer again?
So this wall was never engineered
It
by
was Doug
anybody.
DeVesta was the original engineer.
But he
Just-
did not
He did
certify.
not certify to the wall that was built.
Doug DeVesta was the engineer of that
He
wall.
didn't certify to
There's
the
not
wall
an
that was
as-built.
built.
But guys,
Right.
guys,
Had
if
we
there
been elected-
wasn't 1 foot or 2 foot more dirt on one little corner of this
Yeah,
property,
10%.
would we still be saying the wall wasn't certified right now?
This is
Like if the
I'm
grade
sorry.
was all.
Okay, so let
grade-
me just put my proposal, since I've been cut off a few times. What I would like to do is ensure that we get a survey now, put a bond for 2 years, get another survey to tell the neighbor that the wall is not moving. Because I would feel extremely terrible if that wall were to have some integrity risk, and in 2 years, the P and Z Commission sitting here and saying, wait, let me go back. What happened and why?
I understand.
Okay, and that's the only thing I'm asking. Again, it was a disgrace that this even happened and the way it did, but we gotta look beyond that. I don't think it suits the neighbors by going back to the original plan, nor do I think it suits the property owner.
No, I understand. I was just asking the question, which is, if the grade, Jeremy and Fred, was not a foot too high or 2 feet too high, what would be happening if you went and you were like, oh yeah, that's great. And you looked, oh, this wall is a little longer, but that's your right to do. Would it still have to be certified that the wall was holding the planned grade versus 1 more foot of grade?
That's a great question. Do you certify?
That's what I'm not trying to argue with you,
4
John,
inches,
or
I think it's 4.
about that.
Any
It was
wall-
just that I don't think, like, if you guys just went out, okay, you want your CO, here's your land, ooh, okay, yep, your grade all matches, oh, but this wall's a little longer, do you still need certification that the wall was holding the planned grade?
Right, any wall more than 4 feet high, 4 feet or higher, requires a permit from the building department.
Right, and this one's not.
Right, this
So
one is.
I think John's answer is grade 1 foot higher or not, 2 feet higher or not, the wall never needed to be certified.
Again, but this
Okay, I don't
guy,
agree. So I do not want that. I think this is,
Okay.
I want to prove it as it is.
I just,
I'm out, because I missed a lot of this.
I think you need to survey the wall twice
I,
to ensure the grade stays.
I want to know why we're worried about the certification.
Yeah, we never worried about.
because this
3
was,
feet walls.
You do.
when we put site plans in place, we expect that the property owner follows them and puts walls
see,
in
John, I
that have
think
been
that's
approved.
what, so we don't, I don't
Can I just,
know
let me finish
what you
my
know,
High school-
right, which
the high
is
school too.
Jim has a question.
great.
Does not the owner have the right to build the wall without seeking an approval?
But it's a retaining wall,
No,
it's not a
wait a minute.
wall.
Nope,
Let me
that's
finish.
not the question.
The wall, in this case, it's retaining fill that is
So this is
non-compliant.
not a wall, this is a retaining wall.
Correct.
Correct,
And it's the fill behind the wall.
correct.
So the wall, like if you were to build a wall, a 4-foot high wall on your property, which doesn't hold back any dirt, that would be, or say 3 feet 11 inches, we would say fine. It doesn't need a building permit because it's not 4 feet high, and there's no fill that it's holding up. In this case, the amount and location of the fill required a review and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which approved a specific plan. And
The difference is
Okay.
10%.
I
The
don't want
wall-
to cut
the
you
wall-
off.
This is-
But this is important.
The wall-
If we're happy that this, if we accept that this is a retaining wall, not a wall by right that somebody can just build in any place they want to, then I agree with the approach of having it surveyed today and having it surveyed in 24,
I have
36
one-
months, I don't care. But
Which was
then the
quick,
question is gonna be, what's the remedy? If it moves,
Well-
what's the
But
remedy?
can Doug DeVesta be the one who certifies it now? He's the one who engineered it. But with
He didn't
normal-
engineer it, he engineered a smaller wall
Yeah.
with less fill
But
behind it,
he's
that's the
one
whole.
that was on the project and approved it,
Right,
right?
but they
That
didn't
was
build
we
what, they didn't
discussed.
build what he designed.
Oh, but he was there. Am I wrong? Because I feel
You
like.
don't know he was there.
I don't know, I
I
cannot,
thought Doug was hired after.
no.
Guys,
No.
guys, guys,
Craig
guys,
is
guys,
right.
guys, quiet. Please let Jeremy go through the fact pattern, because this is really important. There's been a number of engineers involved in this, and a site plan that was not followed, okay?
I think Doug drew the original plan.
Mhm.
I do not know how far along Doug was involved in the project. Doug, my understanding is Doug is no longer involved in the project. Craig Flaherty was here representing the applicant. So I don't think the commission could make Mr. Lesko force him to hire a specific engineer.
So the remedy in my mind is to have the wall surveyed now, hold a bond, and in 2 years, have another survey. If everything's kosher and the wall's not moving, bond goes away, they get, they go on their merry way.
I have
TCO.
I would
one,
give him a TCO now,
Why TCO? This is.
give him a TCO now, and then he gets a CO.
It's a
when
10%
it's done.
grade change on a house that is to code, okay? I think that's a ridiculous thing to put a TCO on a house.
I'm in favor of the TCO, thank you.
can I ask one more question? Last question for me.
Insurance issue.
Guys, if Jeremy and Fred, we have a different applicant who asks to do that, to build a home and there's gonna be grade and a retaining wall, and you go on site at the end and you see the grade is level and the wall is there, what do you do to make sure that the wall is actually retaining? Is there something that's actually done?
Like the modifications we've had. That's
Let's
fine.
say, this is my question, so if there wasn't that extra, do
Usually we
you
get,
certify that that wall's retaining versus the as of right, just sitting with air on either side, 4-foot wall?
if
or
it
under?
is a wall of less than 4 feet,
Right,
which would not require building department approval, we don't necessarily look for a specific certification on the wall.
right, but if
We
it's a
would look
retaining
for-
wall,
Right, even if it's a retaining wall, we would look
Oh.
for usually the letters we get from engineers on these regrading projects are a little broader. They look at, we aim to look at the issue of stormwater management.
Mm.
Was that installed pursuant to the plans? Is the grading generally consistent? Usually that works part and parcel with an as-built survey, which Dave would then take and overlay on the approved plan. And sometimes things are off by a little bit, inch or two or whatever, but where there's a significant difference, I think,
Just
So
off
my
by,
issue
it's
is
off by
we get
18
these
inches.
modifications that come with these grading, which Liz is talking about, and we don't ask for this to be done. So this is, I get your point, I totally get your point, because it wasn't done as it was supposed to be, but we get modifications all the time.
Right.
And they redo the walls, and we don't ask them to certify that they can hold the fill.
Okay, I understand that. I think in this case, given the fact pattern, given the multiple
See, but
issues
that's-
with the project, I would like to ensure that that wall doesn't move.
Okay, so we're gonna, if we agree on survey today, a survey tomorrow, a retention or a, whatever you call it.
Dude, you said TCO?
A
To
bond.
get a TCO today,
Whatever.
I would like a CO today.
What's the remedy gonna be? They're gonna set aside enough money to
you can even hold,
repair the wall?
No,
You
if
can hold the
if the
TCO.
if the wall moves and that next survey doesn't show that the wall was constructed properly, you won't get a CO.
But how about if he wants to sell his house?
He can still sell his house.
He could still sell his house. The
What are you
problem,
talking
say you
about?
can't
There's
sell
no
it.
CO on the property.
So what?
the problem that there's no CO on the property is not our fault
It's not
at
an
this
issue.
point, at this point.
I get it, the neighbors came with an issue on points that were as-built, as the plan was supposed to be, that was their issue. So I'm just saying there's multiple.
No, hold on. This was not brought up by the neighbors. This
talking
issue's been going on.
Right, of course, but I'm saying the things that you're,
Hold on, let me just be very clear.
Okay.
This was not brought forth by the neighbors. This was brought forth by our zoning enforcement officer. The property owner was notified numerous times that he was not following the site plan. He completed that. The neighbors at that same, like concurrently were making complaints as well because they were concerned that it was not being built. So,
But
again,
the
this
deal
is
is
not
like-
punitive. This is to ensure that what is built is satisfactory. And I'm only saying for a 2-year time period that there's a temporary CO.
Okay.
This could have been remedied many months ago if the property owner just had listened to the
See,
zoning
that's
enforcement officer.
irrelevant.
Well,
I know.
somebody said, well, he can't sell his house. That is very relevant. And it sets a
That's a
bad
fact.
precedent if you allow these changes after the fact, after the property owner's been warned time and time again by the zoning enforcement
Once again, I think that
officer.
this is getting a little too
Okay.
emotional, and I have
Yeah.
the
I'm-
benefit
it's-
of
I'm
not
not-
having been
Yeah.
involved in any of the
Yeah,
frustration.
there's
But I
no
think
emotion.
there
I'm
should be
just trying to get
it
to
should
a
be
resolution
CO
right now.
With this
Okay.
as a condition over 2 years. It
Well,
should
then
be
what is,
CO.
what is the, well, I disagree.
You're taking a bond. You're asking
give me
for a
a
bond.
tip, Craig asked, he goes, fine, I can do the 2 surveys. I'm not certified at the wall, I wasn't there, I didn't watch it being built. He goes, if you could give him his temporary TCO today, he would appreciate that, and then they could do the surveys over 2 years. After the second survey is done, if it's satisfactory, the guy gets his CO. He goes from temporary CO to, a TCO to a CO.
That is not how I interpreted what Craig said.
Well,
He said there would not
that's,
be
we can
preferred-
write it as that
Okay.
too.
You can
Well,
write it that way.
okay, so
Just for
then-
example, at the high school, there's the upper oval, the lower oval, and then the softball field. There's a wall that's a retaining wall between those fields. The
Lots
lower
of
one,
walls.
the higher one between upper and the softball field is tall. The lower ones are smaller.
Yeah.
Those are engineered to hold back all of that land. It's not going on other pieces of property. We don't have engineering information for this stuff. That's
Oh,
what Craig's problem
Okay,
is.
Okay.
So, you got
That's
that?
holding back their.
Are you in agreement there, sir? That would be the majority,
But
okay.
wait, hold on, we're not in agreement together, right? So I don't say TCO, I say CO with this is your requirement that we get this done with the bond. There's gonna be a bond.
No,
Craig-
we dropped the bond, there's no bond.
Craig asked for a TCO.
Craig did not ask for TCO. Craig
Yes, he
said
did. He
that,
goes, can I get a TCO if you do it that way?
no, it was not preferable. These were all options that were put up so that there can be some sort of CO on the house so he can be insured properly, which we all are in
Insurance got
agreement.
nothing to do with it. It's
Yes, it
mortgage
does.
what I
If you don't
said.
have a CO.
All right, okay, so
there's
the
lots of-
proposal on the table is
And
what,
money.
a CO and a bond, or nothing?
no bond, I don't think.
I don't think we should have a bond either, but I
So
want.
then how do we
I'm trying to-
certify that the surveys are done every 2 years? First and 2 years down the road?
It's a condition of this, I don't know, I mean, I don't wanna do 2 surveys. We
Surveys,
have
then-
million
Okay,
bonds.
okay. A majority of this commission would like to survey, 1, 2, 3, you're out, you're not
I
in.
don't think it needs to be
Right.
surveyed.
Sorry?
You're a survey.
I'm a surveyor.
Okay, so
Survey.
3 to 2, and temporary CO, correct?
Correct.
Correct,
And
okay.
then the survey will be redone, you said in,
2 years.
why 2 years, do you think?
I think it was today, immediately,
Yeah.
and then in a year from now.
How about 1 year? Because then
1
he
year.
gets a
You said
permanent
1 year.
CO faster.
Uh,
Yeah, okay.
The guy from, wherever he is, Like he still doesn't have his CO.
He is a CO.
Anyway,
He's been several
One
Allows
year.
us to- he's.
Okay,
has
thank you.
the one he's
I
living
remember
in.
this
Can we
was
move?
started
Okay.
in 2015.
We got that one done.
thank you.
No, we haven't even voted on it.
Approval, well, we gotta
I know.
get it written.
Okay.
Approval of
I
minutes.
promised to watch it before we approve it.
Oh,
Approval of minutes, May 28, 2019. I'll start, I was on it, I had no change.
I didn't have any
I don't
changes.
know.
June 4th.
No changes.
Mr. Cunningham, Blight Subcommittee, Blight, I'm sorry, Blight
We gotta-
Committee
do we
update.
wanna, should I move to approve both
Minutes,
minutes?
I'm sorry.
Please.
Move to approve both minutes.
That's-
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll give just a very, very brief, so I'm gonna talk about these properties by their case number. There were three case numbers that were kind of are on the hot sheet. The first was,
Okay, this is all of your cases?
well, not all active. They were, some of them we shut down, some of them we watched, and some of them are active. The green ones are the quote active ones. There are three that were, that we took action on. The first is 1701. The property is the end of Nearwater Lane. It was a vacant property on the lot for many years. The owner of the property, who doesn't live on the property, has some plans for it. And we unfortunately had to issue a blight order against it. So what happens is you kind of issue a finding of blight that they have 30 days and the applicant can come and talk about it. And then after that, you issue your blight order in which you have 30 days to remediate the blight. Otherwise, you get up to like $150 fine per day. Right, so we found that they made significant progress and there's now a demolition permit pulled. So we made the temporary determination, I think, to say that property now is in compliance once that structure comes down. They did make a huge progress. I haven't driven by in the last 2 weeks. I don't know if it's down yet, but we do know that most of the boxes are checked for the demolition. Jeremy, do you know if that property's come down yet?
I do know on 17-002, I did meet with someone, Public Works was out there today on a sewer disconnect, which means they are making progress in taking that down.
My bad. I'm talking about 17-002. Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
The two other properties,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah,
Or 17001 and 17002, are they adjacent to each other and they
They
own by
are.
the same people?
17-001
Are they owned by the
is the
same people?
pond, no, different people, the one with the big pond in the yard,
The fake pond in the back?
that's correct. That's
They do.
17-001. They, in that case, they did part of the work, filling in the pond, preparing it, but they had not yet built the house. So it was turned from a house and a pond to no house, no pond, and then there was a complaint about blight.
It's a vacant lot now, right? Because you can see from the other side.
Let me premise this, Kevin. I think in my opinion, having seen some of the complaints and heard some of the, oftentimes blight complaints are not always about blight,
that's correct. There's a very specific criteria for blight.
right?
So can
And
I-
so the blight complaints might be other issues that they use, some people use the blight ordinance.
Like what?
So can I step back for a
Paint's,
second?
paint's peeling, the driveway's filled with weeds.
Or there's long-term neighbor issues that
Oh, okay.
there's disputes over the length of the grass or some
Yeah.
more mundane issue that the blight committee says it doesn't rise to the level of
There's a
blight.
big checklist, right?
There's a long
Can I
check.
step back for a second?
Hmm.
I counted 38 on this list, right?
Mhm.
What's the difference between the red, green, and yellow?
Don't really pay attention to that. That's kind of an internal coding that the blight officer uses.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the three properties that the blight commission has taken action on because we've actually determined that there were blight conditions
Okay.
on the property.
Okay. So,
Okay.
thank you.
The next one is 17005, which is, I guess, essentially behind H&L Chevrolet, kind of back there.
It's
a
on
little
the
bit.
curve, as you go on Old Kings Highway South, it's a house on the curve in the road, on the north side of the road.
Right. So the issue there was, so the owner doesn't live there. It's being rented. There's some very sensitive issues going on with the tenants in terms of, let's just put it that way. And there was a bunch of construction material that the tenant had, but there's also some debris and material that from the owner. We worked probably over the course of 2 or 3 months with social services, the town, and the owner, and they have gotten the majority of the debris off the property. And we found that post-inspection, the blight officer now has deemed it remediated. So that was good. And then the third one, I think, is going to be an ongoing issue, which is 18004, which is on the corner of Old Kings Highway South and the Post Road. The owner there has made some progress. I don't think that that all of the blight issues have been remediated. I think we're going to have to talk about tomorrow what the next steps are going to be, because I'm not sure. But I think the property owner has submitted an application for a P&Z application, correct?
That's correct, the commission will be seeing that in 2 weeks from today.
And I'm not sure that will remediate the blight conditions, but there is some, I would say, medium amount of remediation from some of the blight conditions. I think there were 4 or 5 that are still remaining. The only other one, which is going to probably come up a little bit on the radar screen, is 17011. And I think that's kind of escalating to the point where the board may have to take a little bit more active. So that's probably, those 3 were the active ones. I suspect 17001 might become a little bit more active. But again, that's a sensitive one, and where we're going to involve some additional town services there. So the hope is never to blight the property, right? The hope is to connect them.
Remedy.
Yeah, and a lot of time, John, as you know, that some of these stuff aren't intentional, right? There's different forces going on that we try to connect. Every meeting we have, either Jeremy or we try to have somebody from the health department or social services or the town come and see if we can help them remediate these issues. So it's not meant to be punitive.
And how often do you guys meet roughly?
At least once a month.
Okay.
If we do issue blight orders, we have a specific time frame that we have to meet again to determine if the order has been remediated. So I think we might compress that once those blight orders have been issued, but it's generally about once a month.
Okay. Anything else? Any other
No.
questions? Rick? Okay.
It looks
Thank
like-
you, sir.
Looks like no more cases in 2000. Is this your last case? Is that how the dates work?
Yeah, it's a good question. The document says May 22nd, 2018. You think, is that Was there, I would imagine once you guys got set up, there was a flurry of activity as some people were determining what blight was and.
You know, I think
Public was
for the most
educated.
part, a lot of these things were kind of in the hopper and we
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
Right? And now that they've kind of quantified what blight is,
Yeah.
like we start ticking off
Yeah.
these things, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
There hasn't been a huge flurry of influx of blight.
Oftentimes, it's the same, there are many complaints about certain properties that trickle in, or like, one might be this, and then in 5 months, another complaint about the same property. Looking at some of these, I'm aware of a number of these, some of them seem to be, at least in my opinion, more neighbor disputes. So there's a couple on here, I think, oh, clearly this one was a neighbor's. But,
I don't mean to laugh, but it's, you
It
know.
happens.
but it happens, and the blight officer follows up and sends a letter to the folks, say, I followed up, and it doesn't meet the criteria in the ordinance to be categorized as blight, and he closes out the matter.
And my last question, who's our blight officer now?
So Nick Jossam is our blight officer, and he has since given his notice to take a different role. I think he's still going to do some work for David. So I think Kate is interviewing both a part-time fire marshal or fire inspector, with part of that person's responsibility will also be
Oh,
to
interesting.
take
Okay.
up the responsibilities of the blight officer.
All right, thanks, and thank you for being our
Cool,
representative, sir.
cool.
One of your many talents. Project status update, anything new? I saw did they start with
Kelsey's in here too.
the foundation of Allen, not Allen?
I think they did Old Town
Old Town
Homes,
Homes,
I
so-
think they did start. I did get a voicemail from Jennifer Montanaro that they're gonna start working on those cross-country pass schools out this week.
Oh, wow, okay,
So
so
I have
they
a
were getting
feeling
final
next week-
approval today.
They got our
Hopefully,
approval last night.
and Board of Ed, they were
Board of Ed
meeting
is
with
meeting
tonight? Okay.
So I think they're gonna get started.
Great.
Just was on the phone with Mike Lynch earlier today about certain things so I would expect that work to get started very, very soon.
Just to fill you in, I showed up at a facilities committee meeting in the Board of Ed, and there's been money allocated towards a storage facility in some way, shape, or form. So I suggested to Mr. Lynch and the subcommittee that they, as they determine what their needs might be, they go to speak to staff and, figure out where things can be built on that property. So, we don't go in blind, or we don't, and we found the as-built for the
Yeah.
cafeteria expansion, which is great, so now we're not gonna be digging and finding, a conduit or something, at least in that side of the school, so that was cool. I don't have anything else.
If they need a permanent shed, do they need a permit?
Yeah,
Yeah, they will. And again, the whole, the basic needs are not just one central facility, although they will need a larger one around the stadium area, but it's, softball has some needs, the ovals have some needs. So there's other things that they have and need to figure that all out, but hopefully they can work in tandem, so no surprises. Calendar update.
Commission does not meet next Tuesday. The meeting after that would be June 25th, which would be a very full night. Executive session with town council to discuss some pending litigation. And then I think 5 or 6 public hearings, including a hearing on Country Club of Darien, adding a paddle court. The final hearing night for 77 Leroy, the modification. And I think hearing that Fred and I are going to go follow up on is a regrading permit for 25 Schofield Farm. It's a house under construction almost all the way at the end of Schofield Farm Road in Allwood, and they're building a house on a very steep property. So they want to regrade it to get a little bit of yard area. There's a big detention pond on the property, so that'll be coming to you June 25th. And then no meeting the week after, and then July 9th would be the next meeting after that.
And I'm out, sorry, Jeremy, the 16th.
I'm out the 9th of July.
Okay.
Okay.
Do me a favor, give me those dates once more.
June 25th, 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay.
No meeting the week after, which is July 4th week.
Will give us, okay.
Everyone's here June 25th?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. 25th.
So 6:25, 7:14,
7/9.
7, oh, I'm sorry, 7.
Tuesday, 7/9, Liz is
Yeah.
out that night.
Okay,
And then
7/16.
7/16, Kevin is out on 7/16.
769 can be.
Yes.
And-
7:23.
and we're, in 7:23?
7/23,
Is there a meeting,
I'm out.
7:23?
7:23.
7/23, there will be a meeting July 23rd. That's going to be a public hearing night. The deadline for those applications will be this Friday.
All right,
No August, right?
Fingers crossed. No,
okay, and then the next item is election of officers. A couple people have asked me to put that off to a subsequent meeting, so we shall do that if that's okay with everybody right now.
I feel like we had a lot of stuff in flight that perhaps changing officers is not. Give that another meeting.
Okay.
Well, what do you want, John? Bring in the one?
Well,
Technically
I'd
the one
rather we
meeting.
have all our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And that would be great.
Okay.
There will be severe penalties over time, though. All joking aside. And then other business, no other business, so could I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second?
all in favor?